Today we're actually exploring, and if, has anyone read the profile of what this session's meant to be about? Or you're just here because you're good? No, so it's about AI and the state in low, medium income countries. And the way it's phrased is pretty much how nation states can respond to and how they're influenced by AI. So they actually have no control over AI at all, do they? The people who have the control are the private sector companies, mainly in the US. So I think that's one of the sort of hidden secrets under what we're going to be talking about. But, and I go to my notes now, the way we're going to structure this is we can't cover all of the factors. So we're going to work on two main areas. So what's the first half going to be on?
Première partie, c'est sûr.
Efficiency and equity. Thank you. At least somebody's listening. And the second half on security and human rights. And each of our distinguished panel of speakers, and I'm going to introduce them in a moment, have 5 minutes that they could split between those two themes. So some are going to focus or have been directed to focus by me on one theme. And probably, depending how it goes, after we've discussed efficiency and equity, we're going to turn over to you for any sort of quick comments and feedback to the panel. And then we're going to go on to security and human rights and another round of quick feedback from you. And then we're going to have the panel to interact amongst themselves. So you have to be nice to each other, or actually somebody else is going to be nasty to you in return. Perhaps, I'm not sure. And then we're going to open it to the floor again. So we're going to have a sort of toing and flowing. And I promise you, we will finish in time for coffee, which is at 12 o'clock? 11, okay. And I've asked for somebody to direct me to somebody who's going to be picking up the online people. So if there are any online comments, those of you joining online, please fire in your questions, comments, and I will do my best to... Who's doing it? Okay, in the empty chair. This is AI working. G'day, lovely to see you. I mean, so glad. Do take on a really important role. See, that's what chairs are for, you know. Okay, so we now move to I've warmed you up. That's the warm-up act of not quite as good as last night's brilliant performance. So thank you, Tim. So who is on our panel? How many of these great people do you know already? How many know more than 3 of the panel? Okay, so it's worthwhile me introduce you. So when I introduce you, if you're feeling up to it, could you please stand up? Or do you want to stay sitting down? Because if I just say, this is Johannes, okay, you know who Johannes is because he was introduced yesterday. But which of these 2 people is Ashley? Or are you Ashley? No, anyway, so just wave or say hello. So I'm going to run through very quickly. I asked them to give 50 words and how they wanted to be introduced, and I've cut those to even fewer. So Ashley is me. It's fellow of APEC's Policy Support Unit. And APEC, if you don't know, is the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. And she led the 2025 report using AI to power up efficient and resilient energy systems, which outlines regional and domestic policy options to advance AI integration in energy, and particularly in the Asia Pacific. Did I get that right? Thank you. So Johannes, you were interested yesterday. And he's executive head of Paris 21 Secretariat, which, as you now all know, if you were here yesterday anyway, is a global partnership promoting the better use and production of data in developing countries hosted at the OECD. And he publishes extensively in academic journals, as well as in the Huffington... I didn't know you had a Huffington Post blog. Is that still running? I said so, okay. My notes is an old bio, so I sort of should have deleted that. But anyway, he covers many areas of interest, and I certainly enjoyed your comments yesterday. Lucie, who you've just arrived today. So it's great to see you here. Lucie Chateau is an assistant professor in screen media, and she leads Diversifying Creative AI at the Inclusive AI Lab. And she has a PhD in digital culture and aesthetics. And I actually thought you were going to be behind the performance we had last night, because it's so up the sorts of things that you've been doing. But she leads the cluster on the Inclusive AI Lab, where she actually does research herself on how to create cross-cultural frameworks to reward creative work, particularly in a global south context. But I have problems, I'm a geographer, so I have problems with global south and global north because it gives sort of geographical determinism. And anyway, that's another story. We won't go there. Sri Rentala Chandrashekhar, who I'm sure is known to many people here. He is chairman of the Centre for the Digital Future. He's former secretary to the government India for IT, electronics and telecom, where he spearheaded numerous initiatives in e-governance, as I'm sure you're familiar. And he served as president and CEO of NASSCOM, which is the country's reputed IT industry body, where he held numerous industry initiatives. So Chandra, it's great to have you here with us. And last, sorry, Tiago, it's taken so long to get to you, is Tiago Peixoto, who is Senior Digital Specialist in the World Bank's focal point on AI and digital services for the Western Balkans and for Europe. And he's co-author of the forthcoming World Development Report on AI. And he's a recipient of the Louis Brownlow Award for the American Society for Public Administration, and has a PhD from the European University Institute in Florence. So I like the Italian connection. Okay, that didn't take too long. Why don't we clap them before they speak? Now, this is where I must get out my timepiece, because I promised them that because we're in a great rugby town, yeah, rugby, they get a yellow card when they're timing. They all know what they have to do. Yellow card when their time is about to run out. And when the red card comes, I need you, unless you're really enjoying what they're saying, and I'm sure you will be, so this is where it gets tricky, but you to start waving at them and say, it's time to sit down again. But we hopefully won't use the red and yellow cards. Okay, so let's get to work. You're looking apprehensively, you've forgotten the manual. So we're beginning with on efficiency and equity. Do we have multiple microphones? Yes, you have. So if you'd like to, because we have to quick fire between. Lucie, I believe we agreed that you were going to go first. And so you have a full 5 minutes on inclusive AI lab and the fight against techno-pessimism.
Let me see. Oh, yeah, that does work. Thank you so much, Tim, for such a vibrant and dynamic introduction. I think that really set the tone for today. Indeed, so I'm from the Inclusive AI Lab, hosted at Utrecht University, where we do research on developing better data tools for the adoption of AI in well, what we call the Global South, and what Payal Aurora, you might know, some of you, our professor and our head of the lab, has deemed actually the next billion users. And that's a term we sometimes throw around, we sometimes like to use instead of this geographical idea of the Global South. The next billion users is a much more optimistic idea, a much more tech-forward idea, a much more innovation-driven idea to refer to people that are so enthusiastic and so optimistic about adopting technology and adopting innovative data tools. Indeed, as we often talk about, there's so much creativity and so much optimism that comes from, I'm going to use the term Global South, but you know, within quotation marks. And it's something that actually really rivals these narratives of techno-pessimism that we have here in the West. And these narratives of doom and gloom, and there's nothing that we can do about AI, and we just have to conform to it, and we just have to work within its parameters. Well, those narratives here in the West aren't really helping us. They're not really helping us kind of develop better methods and better tools to understand how AI might work for us. Whereas if we were to flip the script, to flip the narrative, and embrace more of of an optimistic, of an enthusiastic approach to AI adoption, to developing better data tools, then we might actually get somewhere a little bit more productive. And we see this optimism and this hunger for growth and innovation really happening in the Global South, right? So 90% of the world's youth resides in the Global South, and they have a want and a desire to participate in the global conversation. And often these data tools, these AI systems are the way to do it. So what we do at the lab here is to reposition the creators, the people that use these tools, these AI tools in the Global South, as not just data points, right? Not just extractivist notions of how do we get more data from people that use AI tools, but as creators of knowledge, right? So producers of knowledge, and how do we valorize their input? So we do a lot of work in terms of creativity. I'm the lead of the creative AI sector, where we think about creative data justice. So who gets to be rewarded for creative work, creators online, how is their creative labor valorized? Often platforms extract, use them to feed algorithms, use them to feed other AI models, but how can we change the parameters around how we might conceptualize and reward data and practices, creative labor in a way that could be more fair, more equitable? So how do we do this research? Well, we're a global consortium that's made up of 1/3 academics. As I said, we're hosted at Utrecht University, 1/3 private institutions, and 1/3 public institutions. And this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 cross-sector collaboration is really what makes us be able to have impact with our research, because talking across industries is often very hard to do. But there's a real desire for people, for private industries to do research. There's a lot of interesting people that want to deliver research that just don't have the time to do it. And similarly in universities, there's a lot of people that have the time to do the research, but don't have the means to do it, right? So how can we get those people to work collaboratively? Oftentimes, those silos between industry and public and academic sector really remain in place, whereas cross-sector collaboration would be most helpful. So translating insights across sectors is what we're really driven to do, because they don't all speak the same language, right? Often policy has a very different vocabulary and language compared to academic framework. So we also have to make a little extra effort if we're going to work across sectors to do collaboration, to translate insights into each other. And so that's what our consortium tries to do. And another way we try to generate impact is, well, we're hosted in the Netherlands, in the West, but we have field leads in India, we have field leads in South America, and we have people that are doing on-the-ground ethnographic work that are feeding back to us, right? And this isn't people that are just organizing interviews and organizing workshops and saying, okay, that's good, then I'll take all of these insights back to my university and I'll just extract the data from that. These are people that are embedded in the community, that are doing participatory action research, that are following people across longitudinal periods of times. These are people that know how to accompany artists and creatives. All right, so I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you very much. You see, I said I was a cruel moderator, but this is in your interests, I assure you. And if you didn't mention Pal's latest book by title, From Pessimism to Power, if I'm correct. Promise, sorry, yes. And yeah, do, if you haven't read it, do read it. And also the previous, The Next Billion, yeah? Worth reading. I actually think that we need to focus on the first billion, who are the poorest and the most marginalized, not the next, or otherwise inequality is going to increase. But we can come back and explore those themes later. Okay, Chandra, over to you. Grab your microphone. And I think we agreed you would speak initially for 3 minutes on AI and DPP, and then you're going to come back in the second round as well. It's great to have you here, and we look forward to your rich experience and what you can share with us about AI and the role of the state.
Thank you, Tim. And good morning, everybody. Am I audible? So, India has actually recognized the extraordinary potential of AI to bring about transformative change at scale in the social sector, healthcare, education, skilling, and so on. But the steps to realize this potential have to be tailored very carefully to the context. Every context is different, and so is India's. So at the highest level, the government in India has indicated a clear preference for innovation over heavy-handed regulation. So the focus is on two main enablers of this transformation. The first is the huge innovation ecosystem that has been built in India, thousands and thousands of innovative tech startups. And the second is on the global IT services industry. It's a $300 billion industry in India. So it's huge. So to leverage both of these, And given India's large population, two goals stand out clearly. One is, how do you ensure equitable and affordable access to quality healthcare, education, and so on? And the second is, how do you generate net employment, not replace it? Because that has to be a critical goal for India. Some of the building blocks are already in place. We've had a digital identity covering all the 1.4 billion people. We've had digital payments system, all of which have been in vogue for over a decade now. And these are supported by digital public infrastructure set up by the government, the Aadhaar, which supports the identity, digital identity, and the Unified Payments Interface, or UPI, which supports the digital payments. So this has actually enabled direct transfer of social benefits given by the government directly into individual beneficiaries' accounts. And that largely eliminates both fraud and middlemen. But to include people who may not be able to access the digital services themselves, either because they don't have devices or they're not IT literate or several other reasons, there are also a vast network of 500,000, 500,000 assisted access centers, which are run by local entrepreneurs, where for a nominal fee, an individual can get any digital service. The fee is, by the way, something between 5 and 10 cents, US cents I'm talking about. So it's really affordable even to fairly indigent people. So the trained local entrepreneur can provide all the services that are needed. The goal now is to actually extend the scope of the digital services to include things like healthcare, education, skilling, and so on. Digital public infrastructure for each of these areas is being developed. It's in the works, and we expect that is going to be ready soon.
I'm going to be very naughty and say you've had over your 3 minutes. There's plenty of time to talk later. Okay. You've inspired us. You've inspired our Prime Minister in the UK. The latest, he's been in great discussions with your government, and we're going to be following India's example. That he in his wisdom believes that we should have a digital ID, and for just you could have been speaking for our government about the visionary plan. So it's kind of reverse colonialism.
Well, I think it would be a little beyond my pay grade to speak for your government, but I can certainly vouch for a little bit of what is being done in India. Yeah. And perhaps offer some insights into where it is relevant in different contexts and where it is not.
Yeah, I liked your content bit. In Britain, we've never had an ID. Our ID is our face. We have multiple identities. My identity here is very different from my identity leading a workshop yesterday or when I'm in the restaurant at night. Anyway, we can have a debate about that. But AI, identity, and all the things you were speaking about, very relevant for other countries. If you could do it at the scale of India, the most populous country in the world now, maybe you can do it anywhere. So, Johannes, it's and we're going to get down. It's 2.5 minutes. On AI dependency. So you know how it works now. You know the threat you're under. You're 2.5 minutes.
So does that work? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So I'm lucky to be the third speaker, because then for you it rests maybe 30 seconds. So at least I have 2.5 minutes. Now, what I wanted to do in this 2.5 minutes, just to give a very practical example. I think these AI discussions I sometimes go, it's often about very generically talking about the potential benefits and the potential risks, and then we list all these wonderful things, governance and capacity and skills and risk and blah, blah, blah. Fine. Let me give you a very concrete, practical example of, and I like very much your intro talk about optimism, tech optimism, for how we can use AI, unpacking as machine learning and generative AI in low-income country context to produce more and better quality data. In many countries, I mean, I spoke about this yesterday, so you all know, and you all witness this as researchers, we have often a problem of quality data, right? I mean, it's often not there. So what can artificial intelligence do? How can we empower, as we talk about governments, statistical offices are part of governments, public authorities, how can we empower them to produce and use more and better data. Yeah, and how can AI help with this? Two examples in reality that are happening. As you know, on the data production side, the collection of data, it's a quite complex exercise and it's very costly. Censuses are very costly, household surveys are very costly, it's a budget issue, it's a technology issue. So how can AI help? Well, we have these enumeration areas right now. And as you know, I mean, these are very important to establish them for making good censuses and for having good sort of representative data. And with the use of AI, machine learning, satellite imagery, you can detect much easier those enumeration areas. And the Democratic Republic of Congo recently used this to establish enumeration area then to help and to get these very much needed points for later on having good quality data. Very practical tool. Another one is about generative AI. Rwanda, just the Ministry of Gender Equality. Often what happens in those countries is that they get briefed by their technical advisors. So she goes, it's a woman, she goes to a place, needs to present gender data, ask for briefings, right? Takes a lot of time, it's boring to some extent. So now they have developed a chatbot. She can go log in the morning and contact the chatbot and gets the latest data from their own ministry. So generative AI and machine learning as tools, practical reforming public sector in low-income countries. Thank you.
Brilliant. And can I just ask the people who are online, do put in any questions or comments and observations, because after Tiago speaks, we're going to go to the first round of sort of interaction from the floor. So if you've got anything, just let me know. So Tiago, your 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
I know you're going to stick to time. You know?
Yes. Yeah. So I think, I mean, at the World Bank, we're looking a lot about the effects of potential effects of generative AI on government efficiency. But I mean, to counter a bit the optimism here, I'm a bit pessimist about what it can be done. I mean, we need to be very frank. Most governments, they cannot even do like a simple informational website using WordPress.
Okay, I'll add time to this. Stick up your hand if you think your government has a good government website.
And I'll prove you're wrong.
I think gov.uk is actually one of the few good things we do in the UK. But no, I didn't say that. I'm off the record. Right.
So, okay, at time. I mean, then let's just take SMS, right? SMS is a technology that is 32 years old, cheap to deploy and everything. We have randomized control trials on like potential benefits of SMS. Family planning, great. You send SMS, better family planning. You failed your family planning, don't worry. For the kid, welfare and education, you can be doing that, right? And as your kid gets older, you can also like help them like with diabetes and things of that, and like healthy behavior and everything. You have millions of randomized control trials on the effects of SMS, right? But nothing scaled, right? So what people who are excited about generative AI in the public sector, they cannot articulate is if a technology that is 32 years old, cheap to deploy and everything else, why would this time be different with generative AI, which is a more complicated technology, more expensive, and so on and so forth, right? And I would say actually there are reasons that it will be even worse, even slower. And I'll give you 3 reasons very quickly. First, generative AI is a probabilistic technology. The public sector is by definition rules-based. So it's kind of like the public sector is allergic to probability. Okay, so it's not going to work. Number 2, how value is created. Value is created with general purpose technologies by creating new services. What do governments do when they use technology? They want to digitalize whatever happened, right? So you don't create value, right? And the third point as well, it is public financial management and procurement. Governments don't know how to procure technology. The private sector rips them off systematically. And with generative AI, it's going to be even more complicated to do it. So just to counter a little bit of the optimism.
Brilliant. Okay, so I said we had a diverse team. You may be wondering why Ashley hasn't spoken in the first half. That's because she's spending full 5 minutes on the second part, which is security and human rights. She's setting that off. So online, do we have any questions, comments? Can you shout them out? How many? Can you subdivide them into groups? Get AI to do it, yeah. Just can you focus? All too often these people play lip service to the online people and we never get around. So could you just fire 2 of them? Just a small question. Do you want to repeat it? So I had difficulty digesting it.
How can LMICs build effective AI governance frameworks that promote innovation while ensuring accountability and transparency?
Thanks. I think I would say just follow India's example. But Chandra, would you like to give it a go? Just let's try and keep our answers pretty brief.
Yeah, I think the whole point is really, looking at things like accountability and ethics and bias and transparency first is probably not a good way to promote innovation. The most important thing is to actually figure out what are the ways in which you can use it. And as it turns out, for AI, applications which provide a positive return on the investment are not so easy. So my advice would be, based on our own experience, to use it and then figure out what works well. And then if you have any problems, to look at how do you regulate to ensure that the downside is kept under control.
Brilliant, thank you. And how many hands are going up on questions here? Okay, good, there are some. And we'll just go back. Can we take the second? Sorry, microphone. Can we just take the second? Try and have a different theme, something online.
What are the best methods to measure the context of readiness of LMICs with limited data?
That's a good one. Who wants to take that? Okay, Johannes, you've been nominated from the floor.
Well,
Mr. Data.
Well, what I would say is that the question is very good in the sense that it mentions the word AI readiness. And for many to benefit and to turn the, as we said, we just discussed the challenges, but to take benefit of the opportunities, specifically in low-income countries, we have to have quality data in the first place. And there's a lot of work now currently done to get the data AI ready. So what we haven't fully appreciated, we have talked a lot about data for AI, but not much about AI for data. So there's currently a lot of work in the community to see of how we can make data interoperable, accessible, reusable, and those kind of things. So we have as a precondition to get the data AI ready, specifically then to have all the wonderful things the colleagues were here saying. That's the key condition.
Can I just add a little bit to that? This whole notion of waiting for the data to be perfect or complete or comprehensive or current before you bring in some tools like AI, which are powerful but depend on data, is a kind of a trap in some ways. The data has to be good enough, but not perfect. And then the use of AI actually enables you to reach perfection with the data. So I think it's a little more complicated and a little more nuanced, and one has to be very calibrated in terms of how you marry your current level of data readiness and the introduction of AI. It's just what I want to add.
Can I disagree to some extent?
Yeah,
I think
that's what it's all about.
For the sake of disagreement, so you wanted to have fun, so let's do that. I disagree in the sense, you talk about India, okay? You have wonderful statistical office, you have very high quality data, but what I was talking about was low-income country context. And here, the garbage in, garbage out is very much of an issue. Because many statistical offices now buy cheap chatbots, they put them on their own system, they don't even realize that the chatbot is not using the National Statistical Office data, but some randomly data. They have no clue. Cheap chatbot, try to get the data out. I was advocating against a naive view of seeing these things. But I fully with you, with a highly developed, in that sense, country like India, we have to be a bit balanced. I agree.
Can I also have a little bit of fun?
Pistols at dawn. Why don't one of you stay here and no? But we are. Nous sommes en France. Go on. Yes.
Well, I emphasize that it's very important to look at the context. India's context is not every other country's context, neither in terms of the size of the population, nor in terms of the capabilities. So you have to do your homework in terms of looking at your context, and the people in the LMICs are perhaps best equipped to do that. Even the lowest income among the LMICs would have a few people who understand the technology and who know the context. So I think doing that homework is important. And I hope I have not made it clear that I'm not trying to say that, whatever state you are in, you start with AI. Certainly not. But I think this calibration and balancing is crucial, and the context is critical. Thank you.
Acha, thank you very much. Right. There was a lady's key with green and perhaps we could try. I hope your question just might be one that Lucie or Tiago can answer. Don't worry if it's not, but we need some questions there as well. Please, as ever, state your name as much as you want about yourself, but keep it short, and then the question.
Thanks a lot. Very good morning to everyone and all present here. This is Nidhi, and I'm a researcher from India. Just picking up on the train of thought that we've just left behind. So even in the case of India, and I'm very happy to note, very pleased to note that, we're very much imbibing AI for our delivery of public services. The state where I come from, we're already in a position where AI is being used to automate conditional transfers. It's a platform called Janadhan, and it is basically everywhere. It's commonplace. But to this, much of the AI that is being used for automating these processes has been trained on data sets coming. Audible? Yeah. So it's coming from data not.
You are, but not to the online. Try just, it comes and goes.
Playing catch up. Let's say we are developing this data. We're in the process of, we have Bhashini, other initiatives. Yes, I hope this is better. So we are sort of playing catch up with, creating our own data sets that are indigenously trained and capturing the diversity, our demographic diversity in that sense. But then the timeline of that, until that data really matures and that data set is actually put into place that to automate digital services being delivered, that's going to be some time. Then what about that lag? How do we, sort of play with that?
Who wants to take that? Tiago?
I think that's an excellent point. The challenge of the diversity of data, right? In India, there's amazing work being done, Agami, Jugalbandi, and so many other initiatives going on there, right? But I like to see kind of like this data limitation a bit as an opportunity. Let me say why. Because generative AI is data hungry, right? But right now, we're kind of like going to the exhaustion of all the data that could be fed into it, right? And where is most of the undigitized data in the world? It is in low and middle income countries, right? So that's a huge wealth that is sitting there waiting to be digitized. And how could we monetize perhaps on that, right? Just to be a little bit more like positive than my start. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And there are other areas as well, right? So for example, when you think one of the biggest areas and kind of like of the value chain of generative AI is in biomedical stuff. What is the biggest repository of biomedical data? Tropical countries, which are typically low and middle income countries, right? One thing is the biomedical wealth of a desert in Arizona, and the other one is of the Amazon, right? The thing is, we failed to capitalize that on the past, right? Already for the biomedical industry, people go to the Amazon, rip off, and comes like to offices here in Europe, and they create and then they resell for us for a price that we cannot afford. So I think there's an opportunity there, but then the question is how governments will position themselves strategically to make the most of this data wealth that they're sitting on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Can I just look around? There was a hand there. Earlier, there was a hand. So we'll go here, then there. But just before that, how many of you would willingly give at no cost your data, all your data, everything about you, to be manipulated and used by AI? Just hands up those who would be willing to give all your data. I think that's really interesting. Nobody's put their hand up. And yet, most of your data has already been given. And what is it you're going to hold on to? Because AI is only going to work in the global interest. It's a communal thing if many individuals give their data. And I think that's a really interesting ethical question that is not very often addressed. So, I'm sorry, I missed your name earlier, from UNICEF at the front here.
Can you hear me fine? Yeah, okay. So my question is kind of related, right? So you said it's an opportunity in leveraging the data that hasn't been fed into this Gen AI from LMICs, but are we talking about data in like major languages like English, French, or how can we actually build models that like Gen AI models like trained in some local languages, like so like Johannes, you mentioned like case in like Rwanda, but then can it actually be done in like Rwanda, for instance, right? Because otherwise it will still be this Gen AI models and whatever, you know, like the applications based on this will be only accessible to those who speak the languages that these models are in, right? So in a way, like, are there any like cases, like a good promising cases where already we're trying to like close this like language gap and LMICs and any efforts around that?
You know, I think the wealth is, there are two reasons, right? The wealth is on data that is in other languages, but there's one question here. Gen AI doesn't speak a specific language, so much that when you put one to another, they start talking in one language. Afterwards, they start mixing the languages, and after a while, it just becomes a bunch of beep, 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 beep. They talk on their alien language amongst themselves, right? Now, another part of the wealth of data is not just kind of like how much information you're adding, but each language, they bring new cognitive patterns, right? And so if you bring more cognitive patterns beyond the information in itself, what you're doing is that you're making that system more intelligent, right? Then the question is if it becomes more intelligent than us and what the problems that come with that, but we can leave that.
I think we've agreed not to talk about AGI and ASI in this session, but thank you. Does anyone else want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in India now, one of the most interesting technologies that is being used is the natural language speech-to-speech, which uses AI, which is now available in 22 Indian languages and does understand the various dialects as well. There are hundreds of dialects in India. And it's also some of the more specific AI, not general purpose AI, but more specific AI, like in medical. It's able to take a conversation which is speaking multiple languages, Hindi, English, and Telugu, and which is able to also separate out commentary or comments which are not connected with the health situation, like about the weather, and produce a digitized medical input and output as well in terms of advice. So I think the possibilities are really quite high. And for India, this has been enormously helpful because of our multilingual nature.
I think in a country, anyone here from Ethiopia? You know, huge numbers of languages. I think within 5 years, AI will have enabled us to do huge things in terms of understanding each other in multiple languages, and that actually won't be a problem anymore. So I'm following very much that example. But the problem is for non-written languages as well, but then you have audio to speech, so even that can be. Yeah, brilliant.
I'm just going to add one more thing. I think I would like to respond to your statement that it's true that in LMICs, they can be considered as data rich. I'm talking from the energy sector specifically. And actually, we're moving towards the problem of data sovereignty issues. So in terms of the energy sector, we are more and more building trans-border energy systems. And those that are already rich in data, we are actually trying to balance how we can be more open towards sharing and then towards achieving interoperable system. So not only that it's about quantity or whether you're data rich or not, but a lot of the times it's whether if you want to share your data or not in terms of the sector of energy.
Thank you, but I think that applies more widely. I mean, I was going to raise the question, when we have, again, going back to Torbjörn's slides last night, when we have the power lies with the global corporations, not with nation states. So how do small LMICs, if you like, charge for their data for the benefit of their people? Is really interesting, because I think actually it goes beyond the role of the state, because it's individuals who are the ones who give their data willingly or not otherwise, and there are depositories of those data. So actually states are pretty powerless, and around data sovereignty, we need to explore those ideas so that some of the poorest, most marginalized countries in the world can actually benefit, because their data, going back to your point, their data is actually the richest because it's what people don't already have. And there are really interesting questions around that. Probably not enough time to go into here. There was a question over there.
Hello. In recent, hope I am audible. Yeah. In recent years, AI is being increasingly used in the education and skilling. I think that was being mentioned. But I find that often we equalize the use of AI and in the education and skilling like other sectors, which is not the case. So what I think the state, when we see it is being used in the context of education or human capital formation, they should be a little careful in that sense. So how are you going to that? Because often in many countries, we see we are equalizing that with public delivery or something else where AI is actually effectively working. But in education skilling, that is something different. We all understand in that sense. So how are you going to look at it? Both in the governance system, both in the use of that, and also the negative consequences that we are going to get. Because we are playing with the children, with the minds. So that is something different that we should see very carefully. Thank you.
Who'd like to take that? Lucie, I'm tempted to turn to you.
I think I didn't catch the full question because.
So basically, how is AI going to be used in the educational system? We're in danger of changing children's minds, and particularly education relating to upskilling. Is that right?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're seeing this tremendously at universities. And I think it presents the same opportunity / challenge that we're talking about constantly in terms of capturing data, where what's happening right now is not anybody's benefit, really. And students are really not benefiting from using AI. They're losing their ability to be critical, and they're losing their ability to kind of do research, observe sources, analyze them, whether they should be used in research. And they're losing the ability to write, which is so important when you pursue an academic education. And what we're faced with is actually, okay, well, do we need to come up with a new framework? And is this an idea to change all of our principles around pedagogy and around how we teach? And I think this is the same kind of thing that we're talking about when we're talking about data capture. We've been capturing data in a specific way, but when we look, for example, at the case of smaller language models, then that is an opportunity away from the large language models in the state to develop new frameworks for data capture and new opportunities for, well, how do we want this data to be captured if we're to start from scratch? And so this is kind of the tipping moment, I think, where we are at in education, where everything is kind of going wrong with how we're using and letting students use AI, but it's also an opportunity to completely rethink education, right? To completely think, well, what is the value of this degree if students are actually just feeding everything through ChatGPT? Because if they're just feeding everything through an AI, then we might as well use AI to grade their pieces, to grade their work. And the university is going to run on this kind of automatic feedback loop, and the value of a degree is going to be so low. So right now, we need to think about new frameworks of, well, how do we want education to be? How do we foster criticality? And what new, more evergreen skills will we need in the future that can accompany AI, right? Not be replaced by AI, not be delegated to AI, but accompany AI.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from, yes, gentleman in the middle, and then the gentleman down here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we are discussing on the right.
Could you just please name first? People have forgotten to do that, and where you're from.
I think we are discussing in the right way regarding the data and AI. So yeah, it's already mentioned in the discussion that right now AI is very data hungry. And when we talk about the different type of SMEs, may it be ride sharing, may it be food delivery apps or like payment services, we citizens have been already delivering, or like our all data has been with the private sector or may it be with the banks. At the same time, when we are using AI tools, we are generating a lot of the data. So my point regarding the human rights and security, who will have the custodian of those data? What about the governance of those data? And how actually, like when we are talking about the LMICs, are our government are capable towards the confidentiality and security of those data? At the same time, how can we as a citizen be ensured that our data that we have been generating for the food delivery, ride sharing, or payment gateway, using of the payment gateway, those will be ensured for our own sake of like our own sake, not at the for the wealth generation for the private sector or other companies. So this is
A really important question. I think the next session is on security and human rights. So I think I won't ask for an immediate response now, but if we don't come and answer your question, which I think is a very good one, we will come back to you afterwards. And there was a hand up here. And please name and where you're from.
Excellent. Thank you. My name is Bozraz. I am from Nepal, and I have a small think tank, Institute for Future. I think listening to the panelists, wonderful conversation, but what is the end goal? What is the common goal of these all LMICs you're talking about, and how that goal can be achieved by riding the horse of our AI? And there are so many things you could talk about: household issues, health, education, lifespan, emotions. Yesterday we had a fantastic presentation at the end of the day. So, but I think we need to, there are still issues that the conventional issues that LMICs are facing. And then I think, how are we going to mask them with AI, and what is going to be the solution? What should be the first step to do for these countries? Not only for the states, but for the private sector, and then for the civil society, and at the individual level. I'm a bit confused after listening to
I'm going to restrict your question a little bit because this session is on AI and the state. So we're not talking about private sector and civil society, even though they are incredibly important. So I almost everybody can answer that. Johannes put his hand up. So you go first on this. There's one in front of you.
This is working. Yeah, it is. I think actually it's a very good question, because I also was at some point thinking, what's the end game here? And to some extent, to put this conversation into the conversation of the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030. I'm actually quite surprised that if you look at development conferences, how that topic of SDGs and Agenda 2030 as the agreed goal framework for humanity. This has been signed in 2015 by 190 heads of state. It's the goal framework, right? And it seems to vanish away.
But so that's because it's failed already, and it'll fail even.
Failed. No,
yes, it has.
no,
absolutely.
It has, no,
and it'll fail even. So votes. How many of you think
it's not a question of voting? Sorry.
No, wait. But no, the SDGs have undoubtedly failed.
No,
and we need to be planning now for what comes after
them. It's a question of the counterfactual. What would have happened without the SDGs?
We might be in a very much better place.
Not discussed here enough. What is the counterfactual? What is the counterfactual if we don't use AI? What is the counterfactual if we wouldn't have had mobile phones? We had 25 years ago, I recall at the Center of Development Research there was a big question about mobile phones and for poverty reduction. And many people were saying that mobile phones will increase sort of the discrepancy between rich and poor, but it hasn't. So I'm a bit surprised if you say that the SDGs have failed, bluntly speaking. Yeah. I mean, of course, there have been parts, but if you look at different things, I mean, we can debate.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Can I add a little bit of heat, if not light? Well, I think India is a very different example. Our experience has been quite different. Actually, the mobile phone has been a great enabler and a great leveler of opportunities in many ways. I can describe it in detail, but perhaps I don't want the rugby cards to come up. So I think that's one aspect. The second is, I think, in responding to your question, the worst projects I've come across is when you say, why are you doing this project? Oh, I want to use AI. This is the craziest idea. So you have to be clear what your goals are. The goals are in the real world, not in the digital world. What are the physical goals that you're trying to achieve, which you're finding it impossible? And why I talk so much about healthcare and education and so on is because governments have pursued these goals since independence. It's almost nearing 80 years, and they have not been successful. So here is something which might offer you greater success. Again, don't look for perfection. Look at something, will it be better than what we have? In India, what we have may not be as good as in developed world. So the equation is very different. Context is key. Again and again, I repeat that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm just going to go, is there any really pressing issue online that you'd like to bring us back to for one final question, and then we'll move on to the second half?
Is a AI bubble? Should we be talking about AI in the state, or should we focus on the AI and digitalization?
I think is AI just a bubble that's going to burst? Yeah. Quick one word each on that, or a couple of words each. Let's begin. Ashley, I know you're about to begin the second session, but you've been very, very politely quiet, so you can set this rolling.
Is AI a bubble that's going to burst? Well, I'm speaking from the energy sector itself. I think the deployment of AI would be meaningless without the institutional conversations behind it, which is public infrastructure. So I think in a way that we are sometimes reliant on cloud services or a few global providers, it could potentially not become a net positive. So I think in that sense, the regulatory and also infrastructure, all of the soft infrastructure around it needs to be built in the same pace as the deployment of AI so that it can make a meaningful development.
Thank you. Anyone else want to take a brief response on that? No. Okay. But I think it's really interesting if you look at the stock market at the moment, how, I don't know whether that's where the question came from. There are real concerns in the US about whether or not it is a bubble. So it's an important question. Okay. We're halfway through. Does it feel like it? Are you having fun? Yeah? Okay, good. So some smiles. It's always, if you're on a panel and you see people sort of looking like this, it's really depressing. So keep smiling and they will respond. So we now move to read the second half of what we're talking about. Remembering it is very much AI in the state. This has been very wide-ranging. But we're moving to talking about on security and human rights. So what are the security and human rights implications for states of AI? And again, I'm sure we're going to have a really interesting discussion. You've been fantastic throwing questions in online. Please send some more questions. But again, it's the same model. We're going to have 5 minutes from Ashley and then 2.5 minutes from Tiago, Johannes, and Chandra. So Ashley, set the ball rolling, please.
Yeah, I hope I can uplift the man's spirit about the use of AI in the energy sector. So first of all, I think I would like to mention the context that across Asia Pacific, we are seeing key challenges in the energy sector. We are hosting at the moment 56% of the energy demand globally and 68% of electricity demand globally. So electricity demand continues to rise, and at the same time, there's large-scale blackouts incidents across APEC economies that can cost up to $1.6 billion US. So it is already baseline energy security issues. And across these problems, we are seeing also that APEC economies have committed to double our renewable share by 2030. This means that we are witnessing that energy systems are not only changing rapidly, but also becoming more complex and interconnected. We are seeing energy flowing in, from, and into multiple directions. And AI, in our recent brief, has emerged as a tool to help us meet this challenge, because most of our today's traditional grids are not meant to build or to face this new reality, to face the rising energy demand and also integrate variable of new energy resources. And it's a great tool because we found that AI can enhance demand generation and forecasting. It can optimize power flows. It can also increase the energy resilience because it can support predictive maintenance and disaster prevention, such as early power shutoff system. So it's a great tool, but we have to remind ourselves that when we put the system to control the power grids that we have now and to put it in the energy market, for example, it gets to determine then who gets access to electricity and who gets access to affordable energy. So, for example, a bias algorithm can turn investment away from underserved communities. And if the models are only favoring those economies that are adequate in data and infrastructure, that means the smaller communities, vulnerable regions, those precisely who stand the most to benefit from resilient energy systems will be risk of being left behind. And what does this inquire, or what does this require us institutionally and technically? Institutionally, we are arguing that first, trustworthy AI system need to be preconditioned to be put in the energy sector that is anchored on reliability, explainability, transparency, and accountability. And second of all, I think what's more important thing is to have a clear and harmonized regulatory frameworks. At the moment, 16 of economies in the Asia Pacific has already in the way or built their own AI framework. And some economies are already integrated in the energy sector. Having harmonized framework not only first ensure the scalable of AI adoption, but also more important thing is to encourage the same shared metrics to measure the environmental and energy impacts of these models that can enforce accountability. And as energy systems digitize, technically this means that data, I think we've had enough to discuss about that, will be the foundation of AI. So investing in domestic infrastructure is very important to build domestic capacity and also reduce dependence of few global providers. And lastly, workforce development is important because AI models need to serve the social environmental context of the models being deployed. So we need a diverse stakeholders. It's already changing the work of system operators firsthand of the power grid system. And so having this workforce development is very important. And then ultimately it's just a tool to have what the previous panel said, that it's a need to have a human augmenting value and not replace human judgment. And yeah, that's all. Is it 5 minutes?
No, you got a minute to go.
Okay. But yeah, that's all. I'm pretty scared
Okay.
with your
Big round of applause for her. Since we got a minute, actually, anybody here from Spain or Portugal?
Yeah.
And experienced the power outage? No, okay, because the whole of Spain and Portugal shut down for how long was it? A day and a half?
Yes, I think so.
It just shows the incredible importance of resilient energy systems and the potential of digital tech in its various forms to do something about it. I have a hunch, actually, that I was going to say most, but very many countries, their power grids and the infrastructure behind them have already been hacked and are waiting for the time to shut them down. You look at what happened in Estonia and Ukraine, the digital vulnerability of critical infrastructure across the world is immense. And the more we rely on it, we have to have security in place. And many states, particularly in poor parts of the world, simply don't have that. It's a real, you're nodding.
No, it's true because I've spoken to some energy industry players, and ever since AI is being deployed, some economies are facing about 4 times more in cyber attacks in the power grid system. So it is a real concern, and we are proactively, when I mentioned about workforce development, some economies are also proactively putting into the aspects of cybersecurity as a capacity building programs, or even just education to help mitigate those issues. But it is a true concern.
Thank you. Okay, thinking of your questions, we now pass to Tiago for only 2.5 minutes, but it'll be sweet.
Okay, I mean, human rights, what problem with human rights and Gen AI is that sometimes it drifts into like rich world solutionism, right? So just for those who kind of like read about AI, have you ever heard, for instance, about human in the loop? How many of you? Okay, so yeah, human in the loop. Human in the loop is kind of like, for those who don't understand, I said, okay, you can use AI, but as long as there's a human supervising it. This is what I like to call the typical like rich world solution that doesn't solve poor world's problems, right? I mean, if I'm a doctor in I don't know, a rich city, if I'm a mother in Vienna or something like that, right? I mean, yes, of course I want to have like a good doctor and human in the loop, right? But I work in some countries where only 25% of the doctors can correctly diagnose diarrhea. Do I want that human in the loop?
You just go to the toilets here.
Right.
And there are some really good wall posters, if you haven't seen them, about exactly that problem.
Right. And so, so this is the typical kind of thing, right? The one, but that's different, of course, from the human right to a human, which I think is a different thing, which is that if government is taking decisions on my benefits and using an algorithm, I should have the right to do a recourse to that, right? I think these are very different things. By the way, there's lots of research going back to the human in the loop, looking at when is it good humans, AI, or humans and AI working together? Human AI working together is the worst of all. It's better if you pick just AI or just a human, most of the cases, but bring them together and it goes south very quickly. Now, just one very quick thing to talk about your question about what happens to our data and everything. In the telecom industry, and Europe did a good job on that, right? The idea of like phone number portability, right? What we should have, it is context portability, right? So everything that OpenAI has knows about me, ChatGPT, when I go to another service, I can do it. Otherwise, I can take that with me. Otherwise, that becomes a vendor lock-in and a monopoly and everything else.
Thank you very much. Did that partially answer the question? I think so. Yeah, there's lots that came out of that. I want to. Yeah, moderators can't really ask questions, so I'm sort of trying to restrain myself. But I'm finding it very exciting. So, Johannes, over to you. 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
It's on quality of data systems or something like that.
No,
it's going to change.
I have, well, just to align what you just have been saying, I think that was very, very insightful. So well, I think what we see is in this conversation, it's not so much about, it's basically about the conditions under which we can get responsible AI, the conditions, it's not so much, and it's happening. I mean, what are those conditions? And I can speak from first-hand insights from what I have mentioned, specifically with governments in the Global South. We as the Paris 21 partnership, we just published actually a few papers on this very specific tool. But I think it's useful sometimes to be very specific and see, as you say, the local context and to be very clear. So we started a task team on artificial intelligence and quality data and frameworks. And as it has been presented, there are many challenges, and you mentioned some of them. Of course, there is a big risk that they are only relying on external platforms and infrastructure. Of course, there is a big risk that the data that those LMM models are trained are not based on local realities. Of course, there is a risk that we even, particularly, as I said yesterday, with the low-income countries where there's hardly any capacity or little capacity skill set, that this divide will even be bigger. There is a huge risk of all these things. So how can we turn this into an opportunity? Well, I think we have to work on, and some ideas came up here, to manage those risks and to work specifically on, for instance, as I mentioned yesterday, leadership training. I think this issue about senior management of statistical offices being trained on change management, issues about accessibility of, I think we talked about the opportunity for local languages. I mean, there is also lots of opportunities that we can unlock. So there is a yin and yang, there is bad and good. I think we should focus the conversation more. What are the conditions specifically for the poor countries that would drive them into getting more into the positive camp? Thank you.
Thank you for giving that. You've captured very much what I was going to say. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear from you, the audience, going back to the focus of what this session's meant to be on. What should states do? Maybe that's something we could come back to. Right, we've just got one last. Chandra, we're leaving you the final formal word. Speakers are going to have 2 minutes at the end to summarize their thoughts. So, you know, you were going to talk about, I think, that's telling me to shut up. Predictive policing.
Yeah. So you said, Tim, that in UK your face is your identity. Well, in India the face is being used as the identity. For example, in the airport security we have image recognition.
And in China, if you want to book into a hotel, your face is your key.
Yeah, yeah. So it gives tremendous convenience. I can tell you that walking through the airport in India today is much more of a VIP experience than I ever had as a secretary to the government. Okay, it's that convenient. So you're trading off your data for a kind of convenience. And let's be clear, there is a trade-off. So to say that I will give it, but you know, I want it to be my own and I'll control it, you know, this is an illusion. I think there's some romantic misunderstanding there. In India, you know, AI is also being used for crime mapping, analytics, and predictive systems in the city of Hyderabad, where I live. And it's integrated with CCTV networks in the public space and also historical crime data to identify potential crime spots. Because world over, I think policing recognizes that repetitive crime is a pattern everywhere. Similarly, in the state of Maharashtra also, it's being used to anticipate crime patterns and optimize law enforcement and deployment. So these are some examples of use of AI. I must say that while the facial recognition system is being used at scale, the others are still in the initial stages, but the results have been very good. And it has seen significant impact on crime, bringing down crime by about almost 20%. That is because of the control of, you know, repetitive offenders. There's also a human in the loop here. And by the way, it's not a mess. It's necessary because sometimes you can get unpredictable results. So the human in the loop here is to not act solely on the basis of AI in terms of dealing with law and order. I just want to conclude with one slightly different perspective, which is from a national security perspective. Given all the fears about, you know, the vulnerabilities, I think in order to avoid excessive dependence on foundational AI technologies originating from foreign countries or from foreign companies, India is actually making efforts to develop a few indigenous foundational technologies and, as far as possible, rely on agentic AI or to adopt indigenously developed small language models, which then gives you better control. I mean, you don't want, you know, a kind of oracle which can answer every question. As long as you have an AI which does your job, that's great. And finally, we are trying to train these AI models on Indian data, because we all know that AI trained on a data set which is originating in a foreign country can come with very, very different conclusions. So I think these are some of the perspectives that I thought would be worth sharing here. Thank you.
Really valuable, and I think you touched on important issues. Trade-offs, of course, I agree, but my trade-offs at home, it just shows why, off the record, India is a much more advanced country than the UK. So many of our companies that you have to deal with use AI chatbots that are utterly dreadful. And I you know, instead of the old days, you got to phone, speak to a human being, you get an accurate answer 5 minutes. You have to wait half an hour to get onto the chatbot. You then have to shout at it. You have to go through every possible permutation. It could take you an hour to do something you used to do in 5 minutes. So there is appalling use of AI, and that raises, for me, really, really challenging questions. Okay, we have half an hour to go. And I'm going to go back to online to see if there are any new questions from, yeah, and they're nodding, which is great. So let's have a couple of questions online while you're thinking of your questions. And there's, so the people with microphones, the gentleman wearing a black suit in the middle, and a guy wearing a white shirt at the back, and a lady wearing a blue shirt-ish underneath at the front. Okay, but two from online first.
Okay.
So in the context of cybersecurity or national security, what are the clear operational limits imposed of the use of AI to ensure respect for fundamental human rights?
Just a small question. Lucie, I'm tempted to turn to you, but no, you look completely shocked. So, would anyone like to take that question? I'm Chandra, perhaps. No. Yeah, can you take it? Can you just repeat the question, just so we're focused?
Yeah,
I will take a minute. Because I've got to. I will manipulate it slightly to make it easier. But if you could just repeat it.
In the context of cybersecurity or national security, what are the clear operational limits imposed?
Yeah. Okay. That's so. Basically, one thing above all else that states could do to try and help resolve this cybersecurity issue.
I think there is a huge dilemma here. And, here the question is, the very entity with which data is being shared and which is responsible for the security also is responsible for making the laws which protect individual freedoms and, their rights. So there is a bit of a contradiction here and no prizes for guessing which priority works better, because when the government decides that they need to do something, they have the ability to not only use the technology, but also frame the laws accordingly. So in India, the laws to regulate privacy are mostly directed at the private sector, not at the government. Okay, that's a little bit different, I think, from the way it has worked in Europe. So I'm afraid that there is no perfect answer to that question. As far as the corporates are concerned, yes, there is legal remedies that are available, but enforceability and a capacity of the state to actually enforce that, extraterritoriality of the laws are all big problems, and in practice, often insurmountable.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't want that to sound pessimistic, but I thought
I don't want to be
the optimistic guy over here.
It's a very wise response. I mean, I will give a slight gloss to it, and looking around the room, I know and have worked in many countries where the people don't trust the state, and they trust the private sector more. And you've got the opposite. There are some where they trust the state and not the private sector. And I think in countries where you don't trust your government to do wise things, the implications of the use of AI, we like to believe the world is all a good place and there are good states. The reality is that's not the case. And if you're a citizen in those states, actually what you do about it raises really important questions. So I'll just add that gloss to the question. Is there one more question from online that you'd like to share?
There's one about how AI strategies are ensuring that women, especially from the rural and marginalized background, have a say in shaping technologies and policies.
I think that applies to all digital tech, but does anyone have a view on that just relating to AI, AI agenda, and particularly women in rural, so that some of the most marginalized people? Yeah, thank you, Lucie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of these things where we have to realize that, we need to guarantee access to those rooms where the conversations are happening, because there are so many people that are interested in participating in those conversations. And at the lab, we work with quite a few organizations who support local movements. So women that haven't been able to found their voice on the global stage, but have found it and have incredibly powerful movements at the local level, right? So how can we leverage those kind of voices to be participating in a more global conversation? It's the same issue as you were saying with all tech and with all development. It's inclusion, and it's making sure everybody has a voice at the table, and it's making sure that we don't gatekeep any kind of conversation, we don't gatekeep any kind of participation in the issues that are very much determining their lives. Yeah, so not a solid solution, but part of the same problem that we've been facing for many years.
And I'd raise a slight counter. I work a lot with digital online abuse of women, particularly in strongly patriarchal societies, and the use of AI in that process is quite horrendous. I mean, if there are guys in this room, we bear a huge amount of responsibility. and we have to do something about that because the scale and the harms done by men to women, particularly the most marginalized women, without security. You want to respond?
No, I just wanted to offer an insight, not particularly in response, but in India, for example, one of the findings of research was that when there are mobile telephones, they are empowering certainly, but in a household, sometimes there is only one mobile phone. And it tends to be dominated by the male people in the house, and the access to the women is not equal. Now, this, to my mind, maybe a simplistic way of thinking, is not a problem of digital, it's a problem of the society itself. And digital is only translating that, and unfortunately, in some cases, magnifying that. That's what we need to be worried about.
Absolutely. Okay, 3 questions from the floor. We began with the man in the middle. You've got a microphone there? Name and brief question.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Hailu. I'm from Ethiopia. When I hear the wonderful speech from the speakers, one thing strikes to my mind about the recent report I read about Ethiopia, which is about cryptocurrency mining companies. And there are about 23 mining companies in Ethiopia, most of which are actually foreign companies. So these 23 cryptocurrency mining companies utilize about 1/3 of the total grid energy the country is generating. Okay, and this happened at the moment when we're about 15 million population don't have access to electricity, and when 40% of the population actually do not have reliable energy access. So I was thinking about the rationale behind this, why government is doing that. I mean, clearly, the application of this AI in terms of, pursuing various development goals is competing with other social development goals. And,
And
I was thinking whether there should be a mechanism to balance this.
Or if so, how? Ashley, can you take that one? It's on energy. Crypto and AI more generally is huge demand for energy and AI. How do you balance that demand with demand for basic needs, for example?
Yeah. I can talk from the perspective of data centers too, as it is also just as energy and water intensive. So I think in the previous panel, there's statistics that says trying to enforce that, in LMICs, we also need more data centers investment, and it's already coming. And one of the inspiration that is drawn is, for example, the Philippines. They are already deploying the sectoral integration of AI in their national development planning. And in their development plan, it is already mandated that data centers has to be, or AI development has to be powered from renewable energy, for example. So those kind of integration in the national plan will have trickle-down effect, obviously, to the private industries. And yeah, I think that's integration of that. And also private sectors have already increasingly shown in their papers that they are or will be or have to be renewable powered in deploying their data centers. So that's my take.
Very forward-looking. The gentleman in the back with the white shirt. And then the lady in the front, if a microphone could be ready. And I'm afraid these are probably going to have to be the last 2 questions. I'm very sorry. You could stay through the coffee break if you wish, but gentleman in the white shirt.
So good morning. My name is Mick Miranda. I'm from Brazil. And I have a question relating to the sovereignty issues that can be generated due to AI usage. As like most of the AI is being controlled by companies in Silicon Valley in China. And the data processing and how we obtain this data is not very transparent to most of us. So my question is related to, as we start to like using more AI to obtain data and to process data, how we avoid that the AI-generated data treatment do not bias our policies and our policy decisions?
Tiago's just whispering. Can I answer that? I think we'd all like to answer it. You have first go, and then if anyone else would like to add to it.
You know, I think it is a very quick fact. We've been doing some research looking to which extent, I want to answer a question about AI biasing our policy decisions, okay? So we've been doing some research on AI alignment, trying to see, like, we ask AI, pretend you're a citizen from Brazil. How do you stand on these issues? And you ask a set of like questions, and we do that for every country, right? AI is impressively aligned to the public opinions and values of that country when you do either persona-based or you do language-based. But there's one exception, is when we ask AI about AI. When you ask AI about AI, it starts to become much more pro-AI, right? And if you think that people are using more and more, myself included, AI to write policy, right? When they start to use AI to write policy about AI, that's going to become a problem because that's going to be distorting, right? On the issue of data sovereignty, we can discuss afterwards, but I just want to say it did good, but it did lots of harm too. This whole many times blah blah of data sovereignty. For example, people saying, oh, we cannot use this server because the data is there, right? But then the guy who sends you that, he sends that through a Gmail account, right? The guy from government who's talking about data stuff. Ukraine had a whole data sovereignty stuff, that a law that nobody could change. The first day that they got invaded, they moved everything to the cloud, right? So we need to be thinking of that with a bit of pragmatism and make sure it's not blocking some development.
I think, do you want to?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think this is a very, very good question, I think, but also very difficult to answer. There is, we haven't really spoke about, the UN Secretariat General has set up an expert group on those questions, on AI and whatnot. So that's just started to work. So there will be.
But the job descriptions or the questionnaire to do that is a bias, a huge bias in the sorts of people who will be on that panel. But
I can't comment on that. What I can say is
so that may have been inside. Sorry. Shh.
Yeah. But the key issue for me, there are two words that we haven't given enough attention, is transparency and trust. So I think many of the things you were saying will depend on, are those processes transparent in very many different forms? The coding, is that transparent in terms of the algorithm? And then the other question is about trust. And we had this also, do we have societies that are trusting their governments or not? And there might be good reasons for not trusting them. And then you have all these questions. So anyway, that's very hard nut to crack, and we will continue to debate, I guess.
And I think it also depends on, where we're going to have to wrap up, it also depends on the timescale you're looking at. There are many people who would see the US as a failed state, and the companies are going to, in the medium term, the big monopolistic US companies are going to not survive, and the future present is China already, and we've heard how India is developing a lot of autonomous systems and you know, the AI on Indian data, which is fantastic. So I think if we look longer term, the trajectories, for some quite worrying, for some quite exciting. You know, what kind of future do we want? And then actually put in place systems to get that. Final short question.
Hello. Hi, I'm Arifa from Tech for Good Institute. We know that technology tends to be sector agnostic, and then the way that the governments are set up tends to be very sectoral, right? So ministry, blah, 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 yada, yada. So I would like to find out if any of you have practical recommendations. How do you get the relevant government ministries or agencies or state departments to actually work together in implementing AI in delivering public service delivery?
Who'd like to take that? Chandra?
Well, I think that when you look at a lot of technology, a part of it is sector agnostic. The same was the case with IT, and the same is the case with AI. And there are parts of it which are very sector focused and sector specific. So I think the first part is to build awareness of about the technology, the potential of the technology, the capability of the technology across the board at a broad level, and have a particular ministry. In India, it's the Department of Information Technology, which actually controls that broader use of the technology and the associated laws. And then there are sectorally focused. If you take healthcare, for example, the specific aspects of AI, whether it is the AI and the technology itself, whether it is the products, the hardware products or the software products, or whether it is the data and the regulations surrounding that healthcare data, those are very ministry specific. So I think dividing this problem into broad general category issues and sector specific issues is the way to go, is my view. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 9 minutes to go. I promised each speaker up to 2 minutes final words. I think we'll go ladies first. So Ashley and then Lucie. And I won't use cards. I just trust you.
Okay.
Trust to be under 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll close my message also by answering your last question, what should the state do? I think many AI solutions should be, and we are already showcasing it in the recent brief, they are already premised on the goal of providing universal, affordable, and clean electricity to the populace. And some of the AI solutions have already proved themselves to do so. There are transferable models that are easy enough to deploy in LMICs. And for example, like renewable prediction or asset intelligence, or even just about the power shutoffs or early power shutoffs that I mentioned before, all of these are low risk, ready to deploy, and sometimes don't even need that many data. So I think policymakers need to, I think you mentioned it last panel, that they need to make some sort of a sandbox so that they can build trust and confidence, and I think celebrate small wins so that all of these can showcase that it works. The most recent development is Chile, for example. They are, to achieve their renewable energy targets, they are already now integrating AI-driven grid planning tool. And I think it's awesome if it can be showcased largely enough.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Lucie, your last couple of minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I think the future of AI is inclusivity and is diversity. And what we've already reached right now is a point where AI has kind of run out of data to feed itself. So it's producing data to feed to itself, or the synthetic data, and it's kind of entering this cannibalistic mode where it's just reproducing the same output again and again. And what we're seeing in research is that leads to cultural homogenization, that leads to kind of like very standard narrative forms and a kind of like flattening of cultural diversity. And what we need is to actually capture cultural diversity. And that's what we've been talking about in terms of the indigenous data sets and all of the smaller language models that should capture data in a different way, right? That should capture the beautiful diversity of data. And I think this is the way forward for AI. I think small-scale data sets rather than large-scale language models will be able to pay homage to inclusivity much better. And what the state can do is empower, right? Empower those initiatives, empower private citizen-led initiatives, empower young entrepreneurs to have that diversity and to capture that diversity, right? Rather than be kind of swayed or seduced by larger companies and big tech. And so the state should support diversification.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then we'll go gentlemen this way around. Tiago. A minute and a half.
Okay, so just like to bring two quick things. One thing that is concerning me is what I've been kind of like, I don't have a better word, is what we call the potential inference divide. What am I saying? We think if people have access to the internet and they have AI, it is the same thing. It's not, right? If I pay 0 If I pay $200 or if I pay $2,000, I get something totally smarter or not, right? So what will happen? It is, I'm afraid that we're going to get into a dystopian process in which AI you have will be the new private school, you see? Because depending how much you have, you can have like Plato as a tutor or goofy Bolsonaro as a tutor, right? In the past, we had this discussion of net neutrality, right? Perhaps one of the things that we could be thinking about discussing is about a minimum degree of inference neutrality. Otherwise, you're going to have like people whose capacity is augmented, others not. Now, just to finalize, right? I mean, in the words of Jerry Seinfeld, right? We were smart enough to invent AI, dumb enough to need it, and now we're so stupid that we can't figure out if we did the right thing, right? And people just one thing, people worry a lot about AI bias. I'm more worried about the bias of all the expert groups which are making decisions about us, how we should be using AI. So my last word is we need to bring the citizens into these policies, because if the bureaucrats are deciding, I'm on one of them, let me tell you, better not to trust us.
Congratulations. Johannes.
Thank you very much. So two reflections at the end, one more on the critical side. Looking at the topic, artificial intelligence and the state. For me, what comes out of this conversation, what I've learned over the last 2 days, the divide that we are talking, the digital, the data, the AI divide, more and more I believe that it's really between in the global south. I mean, I hear all the wonderful examples of India, of other, I say, advanced emerging economies. I'm not very scared. I'm more scared about Germany and about our how we adopt technology. But I also see a big risk that some countries are completely left behind. So the question of poverty, extreme poverty, and what AI can do or not do, and how people will further left behind, is a critical concern. And I think development research should focus more on those questions. That's one point. The second point, more optimistic, I very much like to associate what Lucie was saying and you at the end. Localization. I would put it under the under the term localization.
Whoever's doing the graphics, remember this. Yeah.
Localization. All the reasons you said, and one positive example at the end. Kenya, citizen-generated data. There's a new, very big movement on citizen-generated data, and even public sector now takes this more seriously into account, using citizen generator to monitor the SDGs, to give feedback on public services, and maybe to train models. So that's the positive thing I wanted to end with. Thank you.
Thank you, and Chandra.
Thank you. So I would like to just say that, you know, it hits me very hard, the difference in the view in terms of what AI can do and how to use it between the developed world, which is not originating these technologies, and in developing countries and LMICs. Perhaps the reason is that there's a tremendous scope to use AI in creative ways, even if you're not actually generating those technologies or even creating the products using those technologies. And they can be immensely useful in a lot of areas, which I had mentioned several times when I was speaking. That is one aspect. The second is the use of AI and other emerging technologies like IoT and things like that is also in conjunction with the digital public infrastructure. By definition, it is open, it is scalable, and it works at a population scale. That is of tremendous value and use to LMICs. Getting lost in the debate on ethics, bias, legal, regulation, how do we fix it first, is a bit of a lost opportunity in my view. It's a problem. I'm not trying to wish away a problem, but I think that is something which will need to be attended to. And lastly, I think if you can't answer the question as to why you're using AI or any technology in terms which don't involve any technology gobbledygook, better not do it. The reason for using it needs to be based on what you actually want to accomplish in terms which are intelligible to any layperson in the society. If you can't, you're obviously doing something wrong. That's been my experience as well as my view. So I'll end with that and say I believe it's something which is enormous potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And by my clock, it's 11 o'clock. Please thank this amazing panel for contributing. And thank you all for being so active. And those of you online, sorry we couldn't take all of your questions. Let me just leave you with two final thoughts. Data, by definition, is based on the past. AI isn't yet using data from the future. We have responsibilities as individuals and as organizations for actually thinking about that question and having the vision to do what is right, which is an ethical thing. And that leads me, I'm amazed we didn't touch on AI warfare. A conversation to be continued. So thank you all once again.